Um, no more coughing. Let's see. Here we go. I have a child on my caseload that has had a birth injury. She has limited use of her left hand when I am in DT sessions. Can you give me ideas to do ideas to do with that family that they can work on?
Sure. It also depends on the age of the child. Um, if you can give me that information, I'll be a lot more helpful. Otherwise, I'm just gonna spew off some random things. If it's a younger child, oh, 2.5, great. So for 2.5, we're looking at functional play, and so really bringing those hands together and getting Lefty to participate as a helper hand. Usually with our birth injury kiddos, our neuro kiddos, whichever is the affected hand is not going to be our action hand, it's going to be our stabilizing hand. So having that child hold on to, if they like to play, like, I don't know, like kitchen, if they have a play kitchen or something like that, or even if they like to cook or bake with mom and dad or nanny or grandma or whoever, having them hold the bowl with lefty hands and then stirring with righty hands. Having them just engage in any way. My other big thing is weight bearing at that age. If you do have an injury, a lot of times sensation and the neurological connections between the affected hand and the brain are those connections haven't been made and are not efficient when we're trying to get that hand to be used. So getting them in quadruped or even anywhere where they're just kind of weight bearing on that hand and then using righty to play with the toy is really great. That way they're getting more input to that arm, but definitely having them hold on to something, paper, bowl, toy, and having righty do an action. And then also having left hand still reaching and doing things that you need them to do. Have them reach across midline with that left arm to grab a toy. If they aren't able to like actively do that on their own, helping them through those arcs of motion so that we're also preventing any contracture, any muscle shortening, anything like that if they don't use it functionally on their own. The other big thing I say at this age, if they'll play in the bathtub, get them to use that hand in the bathtub or in a pool, because one of the best ways to give sensory input so they're aware of that arm and what it's doing is to put it in water, because then the whole limb is totally surrounded and given tactile and proprioceptive input, which allows easier neural connections to the brain to then carry out movement. So getting them to play in water of different temperatures and with different textures of like bath toys is really, really fun and a really good way to improve the coordination and general understanding of that left side. Hopefully that answered the question.
Perfect. Said so helpful. Thank you for giving me useful and great ideas. I have a child on my caseload, 6-month adjusted age on 6-1, not opening hands much while on tummy and not grasping items with all fingers. Any suggestions to encourage hand opening?
It would be a really great thing to know if we have any muscle tightness or shortening. If there's like a neurological thing going on, we may need to just adjust how we approach that. Again, sensory stuff is great. So finding different fabrics, or if they have like a bath towel, we have something with sequins, we have this shirt that's really soft. Oh, I just pulled up muscle tightness in the left side. Okay, good to know. So when you are dealing with this, if our hand is not opening, and we have that muscle tightness, you just have to be a little bit more gentle when we're doing some stretching. So some nice massage to get that hand warmed up, and then very, very slowly kind of opening those fingers, and then giving them different things to, like I said, with texture to kind of hold on to. Once you get that hand open, and if you can get that thumb stretched out to where you have that nice cylindrical look, if you can roll up like a soft t-shirt, maybe a little bit of a scratchy style washcloth, something with just different textures, different softness levels, and putting it in there, we're going to not only help them stretch out those muscles some, but then we're giving them more sensory input. Our babies who are 6 months old are usually having hands open. We're touching different surfaces. We're weight bearing. So you're building a lot more than just fine motor skills at this age when our hands are open. So if they're not, we want to start really slow by opening the hand, slowly stretching those muscles so that we're making sure there's no skin breakdown within the hand. We're stretching out those muscles to avoid contracture, and then we're giving them the opportunity to explore different textures, different temperatures. Again, water is a great thing. A little bit of cool water, a little bit of warm water, bath toys that you can put on top of the hand, in the hand, and then also making sure that it's not just the hand that's tight. It's not just the hand that's not opening. Let's make sure that your therapist or whoever is checking the forearm to make sure we can flip wrist over both ways, that we can bend the elbow totally, that our shoulder does go all the way up, all the way down behind us, Because if you are seeing general left-sided tightness, then we want to make sure you're looking at the whole left side, which is then also going to impact the trunk, and we're not going to have a nice straight spine to sit and to crawl and to eventually kneel and stand. And if we have some left-sided tightness, we're going to be kind of cockeyed, which is going to impact our other ability to grasp and bring stuff together eventually too. So lots of little pieces to that, but definitely start with just stretching the hand, different textures, different temperatures, and go from there.
Just so we read that question out as well, can you explain what a contracture is?
So a contracture is when the muscle, so you have your muscle belly and then you have the tendons that connect it to, your origin and insertion points. So a contracture is when those have shortened from its normal size and it can't really be stretched very well. So a lot of times if our kids have contractures, you'll hear them maybe going through things like getting Botox to relax that muscle so that it can stretch to its appropriate length. So there's a difference between tightness and contracture, but tightness can lead to contracture when we can't really change the length it's at without further intervention. So that's what a contracture is. So it's that muscle tightness that then leads to an impairment in range of motion, and it typically leads to pain and skin breakdown as well.
Thank you for explaining that. Great questions, everyone. And we can hang out a couple minutes longer. We've got until 12:30, so feel free to send those questions on.
Oh, I see one about, is the brushing protocol still used for children with sensory sensitivity? Haven't heard much about it lately. So I feel like maybe OT is just a controversial thing with all the things we do sometimes, but brushing is something that's highly debated in our field. Some therapists love it. Some therapists refuse to use it. I'm a therapist that will use it sometimes for certain kids. There's probably 100 different ways to do brushing depending on what you're trying to get across. So the way I was taught in school is totally different than other ways I've seen therapists do it. And it's totally fine, not right, wrong, or indifferent. It's all about the purpose that you're using it for. So a child with sensory sensitivity who maybe is having a hard time interacting with Play-Doh or messy textures, you may see a therapist who takes that therapeutic brush and runs it over the hands or the arms, feet, whatever it is, over each part of the hand 10 times. There's other therapists, if you're just using it for body awareness, who may only do it over parts of the arm and hand in a different sequence only once. The general thing is we don't put it over your face. Don't have them put it over their abdomen or their chest or their pelvis. It's typically only used on hands, arms, part of the back, and then the legs and feet. And make sure that whatever joint you're crossing with the brush, you're going to see the therapist then also add joint compressions. The skin is your biggest sensory system that we have access to. So by stimulating that, you're really heightening the awareness that a child has of their body. And then we do joint compressions to kind of give them a grounding force. Like when you do it on the wrist, you're like, oh, wait, now I can tell, like, this is where my wrist is. Oh, this is where my other wrist is. So that's kind of the purpose behind it. I'm sure, like, depending on the area, the clinic, the therapist you have, some will use it, some won't. But if you have a child that you think might benefit from it, definitely ask the therapist and be specific on why you think it might be helpful, whether it's sensitivity, body awareness, coordination, whatever it is. That way they can choose the protocol that's best for them.
Great question, Christy. Keep them coming. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to put in the chat or raise your hand and I can unmute you. This has been very informative. I know this is great information for our staff and providers. We really appreciate it. And again, just remember her email is in the chat if you think of any other questions down the road, or I saw someone put in that they had already reached out to get the PowerPoint and they were also interested in the handouts. I was looking for that comment. So again, if anybody is interested in receiving those handouts that she mentioned, the checklist and the presentation for today, reach out to her via email. And you mentioned this, I'm going to repeat as well. Our next session is going to focus on fine and visual motor, but for our older kiddos. I think you said from 3 to 5. So that one's going to be really beneficial as we have the extended option. We may not be as familiar with that age group as we are with our 0 to 3. So definitely join in there's going to be some really good information shared that will apply to definitely our extended option children. All right, well, I will hang out a couple minutes longer if anybody thinks of anything else. Stephanie, if you want to hang just a few more minutes.
Sure.
But anyone who, unless you have a question, you're welcome to exit out, and then we will see you all on what is the date of part 2? That's June 26th. And it will be the same time, 11:30 to 12:30 Central Time. June 26th will be part 2 of this presentation. And then our typical quarterly lunch and learns will be on the 27th of this month. And that will be with Jamie Hampton. And she's going to share information about federal indicators and how those apply to our work. So another really great one. We do have another question. Are there areas of regression you have seen that indicated an OT need?
That's a really good question. Areas of regression. I typically see we'll see those big behavioral regressions in terms of we were doing totally fine. We loved to play with Play-Doh and finger paint, and now we can't even fathom the idea of dirty hands. So things like that, or they used to be totally fine wearing, loose t-shirts. Now we can't stand it. We have to have something super, super tight to our body to the point it almost doesn't fit. So some of those sensory things where it's been a big change, those could warrant an OT evaluation. I'd also say if you notice your child, the child used to feed themselves, now they won't feed themselves. They used to love to color and play with blocks. Now we those typical maybe autism indicators. So they used to love to play with blocks and play with me, and now we only line them up and we're really rigid and we can't, we can't take turns and we can't play the way we used to. I'd say those are big ones as well.
Great question. She said, thank you. All right, I'm going to keep an eye on the chat here to make sure no one's got their hand raised. Doesn't look like it. Okay. If anybody is remaining and they have a question, feel free to put in the chat or raise your hand and I can unmute you. We've got about 10 minutes until 12:30. Yep, June 26th, that is correct. That is our next, and keep in mind, that will go out in TriStarts and staff update as well as a description of what will be covered. So be looking for that. And also the WebEx link to join our June 26th session will be going out in TriStarts and staff updates. Tina says, I work with several families whose children are engaged in elopement. How does OT help with this?
I have been very, very lucky to work with great RBTs and BCBAs who have helped me learn a lot about elopement. My experience is typically with kids a little bit older, so typically 3 and up with elopement behaviors. And a lot of what I've worked on is keeping us regulated throughout the day. We typically don't want to elope if we're a little bit more regulated and keep control of our body and our impulses, because a lot of times elopement can be an impulse issue where we just see an open door and we're like, oh, time to go, and we just impulsively leave. So my experience is typically with general regulation throughout the day, working on impulse control, and then also just collaborating with the appropriate people. So typically teachers is our, if they're in a classroom or in a daycare, is our environment set up safely so that the risk of elopement is minimal. Working with families to adapt the home, we might need to, put locks up a little bit higher if they know how to unlock the door. Do we have the backyard where they like to play? Is it fenced in? Things like that. So environmental changes and adaptions. And then, like I said, we're reaching out to some sort of behavioral therapist who can also help on that side of things, because that's mainly where my experience is. I do the sensory side with the impulse control and things like that. And then I've had ABA practitioners who've been helpful in the behavioral side of it in terms of curbing things like that.
Great question, Tina. see how many folks we have with us still. We've got about 36 still hanging out. Thanks for hanging with us, guys. Again, any other questions? Put in the chat, raise your hand. Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm really looking forward to the next presentation as well. I know that it's all needed information, but I know that one's gonna give us some great info that is definitely needed to help address some of those, especially goal writing and things to address in our older kiddos that we are now serving. Another thank you in the chat.
Well, thank you all for letting me chat away at you for an hour. I love getting to
Yeah.
share. So this was great.
Awesome. And thank you all for joining us today. I'm just going to keep an eye on the attendees and how many we've got. About 27 with us. They're kind of slowly falling off. So 25. We may not have any more questions. Oh, looks like maybe something's in the chat. Just another thank you. Thank you. Great information. All right. Well, it does seem like our questions are kind of dying down a bit. And we're just a couple of minutes away from 12:30. So Stephanie, if you, I think you're good to go. We appreciate you so much. But again, if anyone here thinks of a question, has anything else, shoot an email over to Stephanie. Her email address is in the chat. And then of course, if you're not finding, there's a lot of questions that have been put into the chat after the email was put in there. So if anybody goes back and you're having a hard time finding it, you can always reach out to me and I can pass that email address on as well. I'm going to put my email address in the chat just in case, emily.greer@tn.gov. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions as well as Stephanie. Yeah, so you're free to go. We appreciate you and we look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.
All right. You too. Thank you. All right. It's about 5 minutes till, so I'm going to hang out just a little bit longer just to see if anybody has any additional questions or anything comes through. And then we will wrap up. All right, it looks like there's just about 8 of you guys left. So of course, like I said several times, if you think of any questions, anything comes up, you're always welcome to reach out to me. I did put my email address in the chat there at the end. So it will be one of the last things in the chat. And then Stephanie's email address is there as well. If you're having a hard time finding it when you're scrolling back, reach out to me. I can hand that over to you. And then we look forward to seeing you, hopefully seeing you on the 27th for our quarterly Lunch and Learn, and then seeing you all again on the 26th of June for our continued summer series. Thank you all for being here with us today, and I hope everyone has a great weekend.